Federal, state, and local officials have determined that gatherings of 10 or more people pose a substantial risk to our community in this continuing effort to combat the spread of COVID-19. In concurring with our determination, I also find that this meeting is imperative to the continued operation of town government and services, which are vital to the public safety and confidence during this emergency. As such, the meeting will be conducted without a quorum of this body physically present in the same location. At this time, I would also welcome members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner under unusual circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. We'll start the meeting by taking a roll call of attendance. When each member states their name, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting. This was followed by a roll call attendance, which each member of the board and staff should tell the chair for the record if anyone else in the room. So, Mark Layton, I see he's not in attendance. Peter Lennon.
Here, no one is in the room with me.
Chris Weeks.
Here, and I'm all by myself.
Amanda Kelly. Amanda's, oh, there's Amanda. Can you hear us, Amanda? Well, I'm in my room. This is Rob Corson, and I am alone in this room, I think. Yes, I am. Amanda, are you on?
Is Amanda a panelist? She came in as an attendee. Give me one moment. I'll try to upgrade her to a panelist.
Thank you.
Oh, it looks like she actually left. So she might be having.
Great, thank you. All right, our agenda. We basically have a rolling standing agenda, and we have a review of the minutes, which were submitted. Were completed and submitted after our last meeting on the 26th. I see a video, but I don't see Amanda yet. Okay. So the first thing on an item on our agenda is just a status RFP. Did that get revised, and then do we have a revision to that as of yet?
No, I didn't get to that. So
okay,
I'll definitely get it on my list, and we'll have it done before the next meeting.
Good. Okay. So what our direction for that was to basically to modify the RFP for the facilities conditions assessment, so that it would be kind of a qualifications and package, and be designed so that we can execute that at any point in time. So as we have a guest today, which is Bill Campbell, former select board member, and probably, I don't think there's been many he hasn't been on. And one of our agenda items really was to talk about Rains Farm. Hi, Amanda.
Rob, you're muted. For a second? Sorry. Can I jump in just for a second?
Sure.
Dave Sharples is waiting as an attendee. Natasha, can you bring him in as a panelist, or bring him into the room?
Sure thing. One moment.
Thank you.
So just, Amanda, just as a technical item, we were doing the roll call. So we just need you to acknowledge that you're there and if there's anybody in the room with you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here and I'm alone.
Okay. There's
After my
Dave and
technical assistance.
very good. So just as I was commenting is that Bill had reached out to the group to just to kind of give us an update on Rains Farm and some things that are facility related that were out of that property. And we wanted to kind of have Bill come in and give us an update and think about what where we can insert ourselves or be helpful to that particular property. So Bill, why don't you kind of give us some updates and some thoughts on the Rains Farm?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I know that you people have been assessing the town-owned buildings, and we thought it would be appropriate if you would include the Rains Barn in your assessment. I'm not sure how many of you know the history of it. We acquired it through purchase of the Rains Farm back in 2002. We had a LCHIP grant for, I think it was $105,000, and we had a warrant article, well, conservation funds that the town augmented with a warrant article, and we paid $214,000 for the farm of 48 acres. And along with it, it's interesting, the warranty deed talks about the farm, but no barn. The barn came along with it, it was there. And so we assumed ownership of that. Soon after, we did work with LCHIP on doing a few minor repairs. And we've since then have tried to keep it up. And I can go through some of the things we've done, but the first thing is that we should know is that the LCHIP warranty deed says that the first interest in the farm is agricultural, that we should preserve the agricultural farmland as an active farm. We've done that by having somebody hay the field each year. Nate Merrill did it for a number of years, and we now have name just popped out of my head, but up at Little Brook Farm, Daryl. Well, anyway, we have it hayed every year, and he. Then the second thing is to preserve the barn as a significant historical and archaeology site. And we've tried to do some things on the farm to some activities on the farm to try and generate interest in the farm and to keep it active for the town. We've had things like moonlight snowshoes. We've had we had a pumpkin fest one year out there. We've done some more minor things. But we feel strongly that the Rains Barn should be preserved as a classic example of a 19th century farm. A barn. The history of it is that somewhere in the 1850s, Chase Wiggins established the site as the center of the Exeter cattle mart, and the barn was built in about 1865. What Chase did was to have people drive their cattle down to the farm, and they'd collect there, and then they'd be driven onto barges and floated down the Swampscott down to Boston to Brighton, where they were subsequently used. And he had quite a business going there for quite a while. After that subsided, became just kind of a regular farm until 1946, when John Rains bought the farm. And he turned it for about 24 years, he had a dairy farm there. And so he changed the lower level of the farm from just being a place to collect manure and whatnot into a place where he could put his cows in to milk. So the upper level of the barn is still pretty much as it was in 65, the lower level has been changed a little bit in 1946 to accommodate milking cows. He stopped that. He did about 24 years. So about 1970, he stopped, and he did have hay and corn and whatnot in there, and just did that. The barn is architecturally significant because it's the largest barn in the area. It's 100 feet long, and it's people have told us it's architecturally is very good. In 2014 we had the barn re-roofed. Earlier we had done some minor work on the foundation where there was some water coming through, and we did some we took off the milk shed, which was on the outside, which was deteriorating. But then in 2018, we applied for an LCHIP grant. And again, we were banking on doing some pretty big work. We applied for $105,000 grant, and we were going to, if we got it, we were going to then put a warrant on the town through the CIP for a total budget of $214,000. We did not get the grant, very competitive, but in talking to them afterwards, they said, you've got a good thing going. What you need to do is be able to justify why you'd want to use it a little more. So we said, okay, and there were a couple of little things, but they were very encouraging. But rather than do it in 2019, we thought we'd take a year to bolster our arguments a little bit and apply in 2020. Well, you know what happened in 2020. I mean, now with the pandemic, not a whole lot of chance of putting a warrant article on the upcoming town warrant. So we're kind of waiting to see how we can. Again, we want to do that. We've had a couple of people look at it. We've had the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance came in, and they did a study for us. We've had Lynn Monroe and Frank Witherby, who do historical work. They helped us actually develop the argument for the LCHIP grant. And so if we would have gone again this year had things been different. So we thought maybe it would be very good if you people knew more about it and could give us some advice and see whether you thought it would rate how it would rate for the town as a historical building. I love how much more you'd like to know, or what I can even tell you.
So, Bill, is that fundamentally managed by the Conservation Commission?
Yes, yes. We have a subcommittee, actually, which contains conservation people and then a few other people. Jeff Beck of the Public Works is on it. Ben Anderson across the street, was the person running the Prescott Park thing. He's now got his own little interesting thing there with performances, and then a couple of Conservation Commission people, and Peter Smith from the Historical Society. So,
yeah,
they're the ones that oversee it. They don't have anything that the subcommittee, the Stewardship Committee wants to do. However, has to go to the Conservation Commission.
And is there you talked about envision uses and things like that. Is there something written that talks about what their master plan or vision is for the use of the barn?
We do have a plan and a farm management plan, which has been revised a couple of times. I think when was it 208, and then in 215 we revised it and looked at it. But we're looking for things that would could kind of bolster the historical significance of the barn, or do things that would help. We'd like to do have it as a sort of a conservation center eventually. We've tried to have it a couple times, and we think now we're still going to try and do it this fall, a sky watch, where people come out and check out the stars and whatnot. Yeah. We've had, as I said, we had a pumpkin fest, and we've had one other activity. Ben Anderson is very interested in using it. We're thinking of using it for a musical event in which the people would be sitting out on the berm that's outside the you probably know the building. It's that red building you have to drive from, actually, if you're on 95. I mean, on 85. And the back of it, the east side, opens up onto a berm that it can seat quite a few people. We've had several events out back there, and he is envisioning, or would like to have a small musical group in the barn itself, playing out to a group sitting on the fields. We've had some nature walks, birding, things like that, and we'd like to do more of that, but a little bit tough right now.
Yeah, Bill, what's I don't get up to that part of town much. What is the kind of day-to-day use of it now? Is it accessible to the public?
Yes, there's a parking lot. If you going north, if you drive past the barn on the right, there's a pull-in, and actually with the pandemic, it's been used quite a bit. People go in there, park, and they walk. We not only have the field, which you really shouldn't be walking on when the hay's there, but if you go to the left, when you get in the parking lot, there's a woods, and you can walk down into the woods. There's a nice little trail there, and you can walk along the old. The other thing was that in 1846, I think, they put through a railroad, and then later on, and I'm not sure when, they changed the route of that railroad slightly. They moved it over towards the river. So there's a berm that you can walk along, which is the old railroad track. And you can walk down onto the fields in the back. It's quite nice, actually. It's a very... I'm
going to share my screen for a second so I can... Can people see that?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
So here's the Google Earth. So here's the railroad tracks.
Railroad tracks are far right of the screen.
Yep.
There it is.
Here's the barn.
Yep. And the field's pretty open. He gets quite a bit of hay out of it. And the north part, where it's very wooded, is where you can walk. And the old railroad track is the line of trees coming down the right side and inside, right over. I'm pointing. That doesn't work very well. But yes, that's the old railroad track.
Okay.
And then there's a very interesting, that little group of trees, the three in the middle, right there. That's a cemetery for the Wiggin family. And you can walk out there. We've tried to keep that clean, and we've got a little bench out there. A Boy Scout actually fixed that up, an Eagle Scout project. And you can walk out, and it's a nice destination, too. The parking lot is that little white spot at the very end of right up there, where we're robbed to the left. Yeah. So, I don't know what. Yep.
Thanks. Yes, because of the pandemic, we actually tried to go there a few months back, it probably was now. And maybe I missed something, but it seemed like my experience was there was no way to seemed like the parking lot maybe had some sort of wood piece around it or something. There was no way to get out of the parking lot without stepping over something. And so we had to get packed up back in the car and leave because my daughter has a wheelchair and she has an outdoor chair, but it wasn't accessible at all. Is that something that I...
No, there is some railroad ties right where Rob is now. And the path to the woods is going up the north part of that. There's a little ditch, so you can walk that, and you can walk out the other side up to the left, which would be to the south of the parking lot. And there's a dirt road which runs up to the barn. The barn's closed, obviously, but you can walk up that way. There's no...
and that's all wide enough and flat enough and smooth enough for a chair to be pushed on?
You could, this could be accessible right here, Amanda.
Okay.
And it goes right, like she said, it's when you get to here, it's probably a little rough, but it's in good,
We're going to put a parking lot just about where Rob's, maybe a little close to the road, up there, so people can actually drive up there and then come to events at the barn. But we've been stalled again for various reasons. And you can see there's a Eversource, or now whatever it is, has has some lines down the middle of that field. Where those two rectangular things are bases of they go right down to the water. There's another interesting thing is that if you go into the woods and you go to the beginning, sort of the northern part of the eastern part, where there is a wet spot where the water comes down, but then there's a tunnel under the railroad tracks, which I wouldn't urge you to try and do, but that's where they used to drive the cows under. When the railroad went in, they had to make an arrangement so he could still get his cows through. And there is a wet spot there, and then a tunnel that goes through to the Swampscott. So it's a nice piece of property, and as I say, a lot of people have been using it during this pandemic. When early in April, end of March and beginning of April, I guess, when we had some nice warm days and the hay hadn't started to grow much, some people were sitting out with blankets and whatnot on the grass. But we're concerned about the barn because it's, it doesn't get any better. Just sitting in the weather, and we need to get a massive project on it to, as I said, we did re-roof it, which was a big help, but we've got to do the clapboards and the windows, and we'd like to do that. We've also stored some things in there from the Historical Society. There's a couple of old things. There's an old sleigh and a wagon. And there's actually, Bob Hall has asked us to store a baggage truck in the baggage cart that they used to use. And, so we got that in there too, historical things.
So Bill, when you said the New Hampshire Preservation did a study on that?
They did. They made...
What were the findings out of that? Or what were the recommendations?
Well, they... to be honest with you, I can't do it off the top of my head, but they did. Ian Blackman came out, and what was the other fellow that lived for a while? Lived in Exeter, but anyway, they came out and they did write up a lot about the framing and whatnot, and didn't make any real. They made some suggestions, and they thought it was worth preserving, that's for sure. But, and I could show you the report, but they, again, did things like took a look at the framing, and that was good for them. They said the foundation was fairly good, and grading and stuff. The exterior, what they said too, was the siding was really poor shape, the clapboards and the windows. And we had actually a clinic out there that some outside group ran on how to restore antique windows last fall before the pandemic. And people came out and they showed them how to do that. That was interesting. There's even a more complete report done by Lynn Monroe and Frank Whittemore, who they have a business of doing that.
So I assume that Dave or somebody has a copy of those that we could probably
That's true.
Peruse. Huh?
Oh, I could. Kristen Murphy would be your contact too. Take a little picture off Dave. Kristen could supply you with any kind of documents if you'd like. And if you'd like, we could set up if you want to walk out there sometime to the barn.
Yep.
I'd be glad to go, or Kristen, somebody like that. We can do that, set up a site walk to see what it's like. And because I'd like, as long as you're looking at buildings and sort of assessing their value to the town and what maybe they need. I'm not sure quite what your charge is, but I know you're really taking a serious look at a lot of buildings. This is one that's historically quite important to the town, I think. So is the commission.
Okay, well, I think that would be a good next step, potentially, Bill, is get the documentation for us to look at, and then with that, maybe set up a time for us to go out and take a peek at it. So, part of what we're trying to do, too, is get everybody familiar with, what are the town facilities.
Right. All right. I'll send Ian's report and the what do I call it? I think that is, I want to say master plan, but that's the management plan, I think, which gives a lot of the history and what our goals are and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there is a management plan on the website.
Some of that can be, as a matter of fact, you're right. Kristen should really be here.
Yeah, so we can reach out
but I can have her reach out to you to let you know what you might look at and where it is and how to get it, because there is a
perfect
a place. Okay.
Anything else that anyone wants to ask or talk to Bill about?
Have any of you been out to it other than driving by?
I have not.
I have. I've taken, Sue and I went walking through it just a couple, 3 weeks ago. And I guess I would say that you're right, Rob, that the road toward the barn is probably the flattest part of the property. And so it's got the most potential for a wheelchair. But obviously the trails, the trails are very rudimentary, if you even want to call them trails. And, there's not really there's no signage to speak of. So in order to make it much more user-friendly, even as a fraction of the kind of development that Henderson Swayze or Town Forest is going to require a bit of work, in addition to whatever the barn needs to have done to it.
Right.
There is a real tension between using the space and using, preserving the agricultural part of the. There is a sign when you drive in that says trailhead to the left, and if you go down, there's a trailhead, and the trail is flagged through the woods, and the rest we do need some signage. Peter's right. I'd love to see somewhere in Exeter there be a place that you could use a wheelchair. I'm not sure the range, because it doesn't look it, but from the parking lot up to the barn is quite steep. I think if we could get a parking lot up at the end, it would be a little more wheelchair accessible. But we have work to do, that's for sure.
Yep. Great. Bill, Thank you very much for your information. That's very helpful.
Well, thank you. And if you have no more questions, I'm going to leave. I've got another meeting. There's another Zoomer coming up at 5 o'clock.
Gotta go Zoom.
My 5th one this week. And I'm retired. Okay, good to talk to you all.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. I think another item that we had on our agenda, which was we were going to talk to Jennifer from DPW regarding both the maintenance items as well as anything that was happening as far as the planning associated with the DPW complex up on Newfields Road. So there was a couple of documents that Russ had sent over. One was a kind of basically an outline of some of the maintenance projects that were on there. And then there's the other one, which was the kind of the CIP document associated with all. So this was the maintenance document. Can everybody see that? So it really had the cupola roof, the slate roof.
When did these documents come out? I'm sorry. When did we get these?
I forwarded them about 45 minutes ago, an hour ago.
Oh, okay.
So we have the cupola on the town hall, the slate roof repairs on the town offices. There's the train station, replace the existing roof, which is a asphalt roof with a metal roof. Attic insulation in the town hall, which is Energy Committee, I guess is getting some grants. Court Street entrance repair roof, some water damage there. And then we have the bandstand floor, mosaic floor and base, which was a total of 159. I think the what is it, $100,000 was in the budget. I think is what the maintenance budget was. Yeah, there it is. Yep. So obviously this, and I don't know what other items have already been done that are over and above this, but so that was kind of a quick snapshot of maintenance items. A couple I think would be interesting to get some more detail on, which is the metal roof on the train station, and then the so on the train station, it's basically the open structure, kind of the waiting platform that's there, which based upon the assessing, it was assessed at $27,000. So it looks like we're going to be spending almost double on the roof versus the structure. So I was interested to see what the motivation for the metal roof was versus something else. And then getting a little more information about what the intent was for the attic insulation, where that would be, and specifically in a historic structure, timber structure, just looking at what type of insulation was intended to be in those areas, just to get a snapshot of that portion. You know, Dave, is there more information on that? Do you know?
I do not have any specifics beyond that list. I like what type of insulation, or that would be Jennifer.
Yeah, good. So we'll find out more, get some more information. I'll put together a list. Jennifer did say she wanted to participate in the next meeting, so I've sent out a note just saying that we'll be 2 weeks from today will be our next one, so she can participate in that. And then the other one, which was the CIP description of the kind of the master planning or planning portion for public works. And I don't know, I thought that was coming out of the budget for this year. I see I know they're doing some work. I don't see here the cost of that that's associated with the 2020 work. But it sounded like they had hired somebody for that to do some baseline work for the complex.
So this is the latest CIP submission, right, Russ? This is obviously different from last year's CIP in at least the dollar signs. Am I right?
I can answer that. I don't see Russ's. He had to go. He had
he had to go to baseball.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have last year's CIP right in front of me, my hands on it, but I mean, it was in the CIP for a few years. I believe the numbers may have changed a bit, but this year they're asking for $150,000 to continue with like preliminary planning and design.
Okay. I guess that's a pretty major change. They had asked for in the current budget the $100,000. And Russ had said they had already started doing some work. So I guess I'd ask, what money they used for that. But now the one, I don't know what the status of the 100,000 is in fiscal 20. That was supposed to be followed by $3,750,000 in fiscal 21. And obviously the stream has changed. I don't know whether because of the expected revenue shortfalls, this is one of those projects that slid out from 21 to 22. But the total cost of the project's gone up pretty significantly. It's now listed at $5.112 million, and it was in last year's CIP, it was $3.850 million. So
go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is going to be something we're going to.
Obviously, this is our first chance to look at this. I can't read this, Dave. I'm sorry on the and I didn't see this before, and I apologize for that before when it was sent out. I just missed it. But is that what happened, Dave? They slid it to the right because of the expected revenue shortfalls, and if they did, do you know why the numbers went up so much?
Well, it's a good question, and we asked the same just the other day. We met with them, but we met them with all the CIPs. And I think I remember the answer to this one, but I think I just defer it to Jennifer. I mean, several of theirs went up, so I might be confusing this one, the other one. They said there was inflation costs associated with it. And we asked them, the bottom line is when we met with them the other day, because we had just met for the first time earlier this week with Russ and the department heads going over these. We asked them to get back, verify those numbers, how they got to them, how confident they are. with them and can kind of just basically provide answers for exactly what you're asking.
At the bottom, it does say a little bit of a rationale right here in the document. It says that the 3.75 was developed in 2015.
Yeah.
That was a placeholder. They added 3% each year to fiscal year 2022. And the fuel island was not in there, which is $350,000 in 2018. So there's some initial information right here.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
So
they also said that the 15,000 square foot number, they have to look at operational, they have to look at the fuel island, and that number may not work, the square footage. So there was a couple of things. I agree, that's the rationale, but I think they'd be able to provide a better picture of all of it when they come.
Yeah, I would point out, I see what you're saying, Amanda, and I understand what you're saying as well, Dave. But if the replacement cost of the fuel system was now $350,000 in 2018, that should have showed up at a minimum, should have showed up in last year's CIP. So
Peter,
just waving your hand and saying it was inflation isn't a really good answer for what are the principal reasons why the costs went up. Now,
Peter, can I just interrupt for just a second? We are the facilities committee. We're not the budget committee. So I think part of what our goal is going to be is to try to work with Jennifer to understand what their needs are and advise them based upon that's. I don't think they're at that point yet where we're because it looks as if this is somewhat of a wag. And I think that's.
I got it, Rob. I understand that. But if it's just a wag, it was a good enough wag to send to us. So, just it being a wag isn't a good enough reason to rely on it. A, B, if it was only a wag, it wasn't ready for us. And then lastly, I agree, we're not the budget committee, but we all know that as we sit here and try to figure out our priorities for buildings in the town, that what they cost is going to be a major consideration. So I'm not saying that we should get into it in any way, shape, or form like the budget committee. But I do say that we need to have a decent understanding of the cost growth and the components of the project.
Sure.
So that we can fully understand, and if we decide to, we can back the project and be able to defend it.
Correct.
With all the cost growth that's in it.
So if I go back to, I'll do it how I would look at this as I see fairly simplistically is that they have a building built in 1969, which is 15,000 square feet. To purely replace that 50, which is we have a report saying that it was a structurally deficient and that it is has reached its usable life. With just replacement of the 15,000 square feet, you have an approximate 250. That's construction costs. It doesn't include soft costs. It doesn't include all of the other things that are associated with it. So I think that's what I want to get to is I know that they've hired somebody to do some design work and some layouts and some things like that. And I think to me, that's where I would like to see us start is really kind of looking at the layout, and then it's going to be one is we understand that the building is reached the end of its life. You have looked at maybe a different configuration that meets your space needs, and then for us to sit there and be able to go back to, like you said, is that here's the cost, and this is what we're going to gain by spending this money, and we can either be an advocate for that, or we can be neutral, or we could be that we don't believe that this is a high priority.
I got it, Rob. I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I wouldn't necessarily write their justification for them unless they can't come up with a better justification. But at the end of the day, we're going to come back to, yes, the building needs to be replaced. We've all recognized that for at least 2 years. But we're all going to come back to how much it's going to cost and what they tell us, whether that is firm enough for us to stand on if we approve it. And it's not acceptable to throw a wag at us, and it's not acceptable to have this kind of change without a much better explanation. Now, maybe Jennifer not being here is the reason why we don't have a better explanation. But that all having been said, I'm certainly hoping that there's a good justification for the cost increases.
Sure. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to explain maybe how I see the CIP process and the funding in out years. When I first got here, the CIP was they put funding in and it was a WAG, like based on square footage. Say it was a 15,000 square foot building, they'd go out. They didn't go out to bid. They didn't have documents. They didn't have the funding to get the documents to go out to bid. So what they did was that they based it on like best, unit pricing and their best guess, and it was a WAG, So then we took that process and said, well, we got to get to a point where when we bring it, we should know like what the cost is going to be. So a way to do that on a project like this is break it up into 2 sections and get money up front for planning and design and construction documents and go out to bid. Then you get a number because you get bids back from qualified firms, and then the number, then you bring that forward. And so I'll tell you right now, in the CIP, numbers in the out years are always going to be a WAG. That's just, we didn't go out to bid. We don't know what the market is and the construction market is. So we started this process. That's why they're asking for the 150,000 to get to that point so we can prepare. We can put out either a WAG like we do based on the best information we have, like square footage construction costs, or we could just put TBD and no one would have any idea. So I think we'd rather give people an idea of the cost, but with the understanding until we spend that preliminary design money and design a plan and go out to bid, we're not going to know what that final amount is.
Thank you, Dave. I would, and I think that's part of the, I guess what I'll call the iterative process. We're going to go through this one. We're going to help them give us the information, what's important to them, why do they need to do certain things, and then we can evaluate as we get closer to the final number. Anybody else have any questions on, I guess I said Jennifer will be able to, and I think if we have some questions, Peter, I think that would be great if you could, we could forward those on to Jennifer about, some of the things that we really want to know when she comes. So if there's, specifics, let's give her a heads up so we can say, these are the things we'd really like to know when you come to the meeting.
Well, I'm happy to try to do that, but by Dave's own definition, they haven't done the work to be able to give us a decent number. And yet that number has already gone up a significant amount from last year to this year. They were supposed to do that work in this year. Now, maybe because of the pandemic, they weren't able to do that work either because they couldn't get it under contract, or they moved the money because they were worried about the revenue streams they couldn't support. So I don't know how Jennifer could even tell us, if they haven't done the preliminary design, how she got to the 4.982 or 962. I'm sorry, I can't see it that well. But sure, I'll put down some questions. I don't want to turn this into a budget scrub, and maybe it's part of, the discussion that we need to have with Dave about the CIP and how the facilities committee can help, not, what's the word I want, can help in the process so that perhaps some of these numbers in the out years aren't just WAGs. But that's a discussion for maybe another session. But I'll put down a couple of questions as far as these numbers. But again, I really don't know, Dave. I mean, how can Jennifer answer any of these questions with any kind of fidelity if she hasn't spent a heck of a lot of the 150,000 or whatever the 100,000 was available to do preliminary design work?
So I think.
So anyway, I'll write some questions.
Okay.
So just, I think would be is to really look at what's happening in 2020, what the intent is to happen in 2021. So we have a scope of work. I think that my understanding is that really there was no capital money allocated in the 2020 budget. It actually came out of their own DPW budget to do some preliminary layout and kind of just site conceptual ideas. So I think understanding where they are today in their process, where they want to be in 2021, and then ultimately 2022 would be good for us to be able to lay that out so we can see what that timeline looks like and what's been done to date.
Yeah, along with the issue of why you moved it an entire year. I mean, that's a pretty significant movement. I mean, we're all worried about whether we can fit all the things we think need to be done into a very short period of time, including the public safety building or whatever people decide to do with the police and fire department. So for a major project like this, which again, I think all of us support in concept at least, moving an entire year really complicates the out years for all the other projects.
Everybody still there? And I think I understand what your Peter is ultimately, if you're trying to align projects with years, you'd like to not have maybe something that's a priority 1 lining up with a priority 3 in the same year. So I think that's part of that intent. So, all right. I'm not sure that I know that there's library is I don't know if there's anybody know. Dave, do you know if there's a timeline for completion of the library?
Well, I know there is, but I don't have the schedule in front of me. So Doug Eastman is really, once through any permanent approvals, the building part of it, that's Doug. He keeps track of that. And he seems to think it's going along, last I talked to him, going along and on schedule, but I don't have a completion date.
All right. I know the public safety study that sounds like the police are starting to work on creating a task force and working on their master plan portion per the study, the end of that study. So that sounds like that's moving forward. I'm not
Bob,
sure
is that task force actually the working group that Russ was talking about, or is that more of a community relations, community feedback task force?
Sounds like it's more of a community feedback task force.
So again, so the question is, maybe it's to Dave, what's the status of the efforts that Russ talked about to create a working group for the public safety building issues that was at least going to be manned in part by the select board rep and a budget recommendations committee rep and hopefully a rep from our committee, as well as other stakeholders?
Sure. I don't. Daryl, do you have any input on that or any updates?
For the police, for public safety?
Correct.
I don't. No, we.
Okay.
No.
I got a little bit. I got a little bit. I mean,
okay.
I don't know where it is with that select board rep and so forth. That's what Russ is working on. But I know Russ, myself, Eric Wilkins, Justin Pison, Stefan Poulin have all met a couple of times over the last couple of weeks and as part of the CIP to try to get a strategy together to how to move forward and next steps on addressing the public safety complex and looking at the study that was done and kind of next steps to move forward. So I know we're talking about it. Maybe not. Maybe Russ isn't there yet on that working group, but we've definitely been having internal discussion over the last couple of weeks to figure out what the best next step is.
Sounds good. Yeah, we did have, obviously, last meeting had some discussion about some of that. So getting some visibility. And I think, one of the things that we can be helpful is if we're involved at an early stage, we can be much more helpful than if we're brought in towards an end of a project, which we don't really want to. We don't want to be we want to advocate for it. We don't want to be somebody who's coming in at the last minute to give the thumbs up or thumbs down on something.
Understood.
All right. We talked about Rains Farm. And just Dave, since on the budget committee side of things, it sounds like that's starting to take shape for the 2021 budget season.
No, I mean, town manager hasn't even issued his budget directive yet. What I was talking about is we're just starting the CIP. We had the deadline a couple of weeks ago for department heads. They submit. Russ and I meet with all the department heads, and that was part of one of those groups that we brought in fire and police together and wanted to focus on that, just discussions. And then we bring a draft of the CIP to the planning board on August 13th. So we're
August 13th.
Yeah, we're still a couple weeks away from kind of having a draft of the CIP ready. And then the budget, obviously that kind of kicks off the budget season and it follows from there.
Right. Well, that's a good date to have, is actually the August 13th planning board is a good one to put into our visibility.
It does raise, Rob, it does raise the question, Russ was going to get back to us after he talked to Dave about how this group was going to interface. I'm not certain what the words are, as it relates to the development of the CIP. Our timeline, obviously, that was approved by the select board had us involved at pretty much each step of the way. Now, obviously, the timing is such that we've missed engaging with the department heads before they've gone to Dave Sharples. So then the question is, Dave, are you basically saying that Russ and you discussed how the Facilities Advisory Committee could be part of the process of developing the CIP? And the answer is really no.
No, at this point, I haven't had that exact discussion. I did ask him about the facilities committee involvement. In some CIP, it's not a lot of CIP is not facilities. But
right.
There is facilities to the extent. But I will continue to work with him. I'm meeting with him. We're just in the beginning stages here. It was due at the end of June. We just sat down with the department heads. We just became aware of what they're proposing for the year. So it is very early in the process. I will be meeting with him, I think, I forget, early next week, Monday or Tuesday, about the CIP, and I'll have that discussion.
And with that too, I think it would be to dovetail some of these things together is that looking for people on the facilities committee to go to the planning board meeting on the 13th so that we're hearing the same thing at the same time with that group, so that we're up to date at the same time as they are. So I think that's a good to participate in.
Well, and also I have no issue. I mean, I plan on getting out the draft CIP to the planning board. I send out their packets the week before, and that would be August 6th or August 7th. And I have no issue with sending it to anyone who wants it. And I can send the draft CIP to the, to your committee as well.
That'd be great.
So you'll be aware of, what's in there and what's going ahead. I mean, not going ahead, but what's going to the planning board to be discussed, and you'll have it prior to that meeting.
That'd be great, Dave. Thank you.
Welcome.
The only other two items I have that are on our list has to do with just updates, and I'm thinking we need to probably maybe have some people volunteer to be some communication liaisons with the energy and the sustainability. I mean, I know, Dave, you're involved with sustainability, right?
I attend both.
Yeah.
Now so as long as I'm here in your meetings, I can really update you on them as well.
It'd be great to have an update on. Go ahead.
I was just going to update. I mean, I think relevant updates, instead of just telling you what the Energy Committee is doing about VW settlement money that I don't think has anything to do with facilities. I mean, just sticking to facilities. I'm not aware of any facilities outside the attic insulation and so forth that they were talking to DPW about. But that Jennifer will know about that. Or the Sustainability Committee. We don't have any facilities recommendations or planning at this point. I mean, the Sustainability Advisory Committee, I completed a situation assessment for the town of Exeter, saying what we've done and what we're doing to secure a more sustainable future. And then I provided them a needs assessment with a host of items that they could work on. And they're going through that now, to determine. So nothing relevant at this point to the Facilities Committee that I'm aware of on either committee, as far as, any modifications to buildings or any input on any capital.
Yeah, or any directives that, as the town goes forward, if we're starting to put into place. So like, Epping has as part of their building permit process, they have a LEED type certification process that they put into place. Point system. So, if there's thoughts about things like that, that would be good things for us to be tied into, because it helps us, guide how we look at facilities related things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the lists, one of the many things you can do to a sustainable future, and amend your building codes for energy efficiency and so forth. But that's just a list on a document. There's never been any discussion about doing anything with that. So if it does come, then that would definitely something I would bring you to your attention.
Perfect. Is there any new business? Does anybody have any new business that they want to bring up?
I do not.
Amanda?
Nope.
Peter?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
With that, I don't see we have any new business. So it's establishing for the next meeting. Obviously, we're going to have Jennifer participate in the meeting. And are there any other items that we want to slate for the next meeting? Do you guys want to set up a timeline for potentially touring each facility, so you get a better idea about what they are. So that would be one thing we could put on our agenda, is to say, let's pick one of, every 2 weeks, maybe pick a facility and go for a little walkabout.
Yeah, I think this is a good time for that. We don't seem to have a lot going on, so I think this would be a great time for that.
Yeah, do a little bit of background and get some, familiar with like the Rains Farm and the rail station, public works, town hall. Even going up to the DPW area and kind of looking at that would be a good one to get familiar with that area as well. So, okay.
Yeah, how would that work, Rob? Would that be considered a meeting, or would that be?
It would be considered a meeting.
Okay.
I think it's any more than 2 members.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, as far as like the next handful of meetings, I'd be happy to meet at a facility and tour it.
And based upon what's happening now, we could start taking some of these meetings and doing that and make them a little more productive. I'm not sure how I guess if we notice it and tell people where they are, then members of the public can do that. So we'll just have to find out what the mechanism is. So the other, any townsfolk that want to go can participate.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to clear it with the building owner well in advance.
Yep. Find out what the protocol is.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe next time we could meet at DPW if Jen wants to meet there.
That would be a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that complex. I've only been there to drop off hazardous waste.
So I don't know whether maybe Dave or Daryl, if you know that if that's allowable with this current condition, or what's the ruling on that?
I know with the Swayze festival, we did a walkthrough. There was social distance, so just masks, but I guess that was outdoor. But I'll should I ping Nico and Russ about that? Or?
Great.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Is that all right with everybody on the committee? Is that, are you feel that's something you can participate in, don't want to participate in, or let me know?
I think it's a great idea. I very much would like to participate, but I think that's a great idea. It's for us to get around and about. And then Dave obviously can, we'll get the CIP early in August, but, Dave can give us suggestions before then if he wants. But I think starting at DPW makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that'd be really helpful.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't see anybody. Raised hands inside of the Zoom, so